Welcome back. This is Keeping It Real with V and G. And today I want to, of course, welcome you back. We've been off for a while. We had, of course, the Christmas holidays and New Year's holidays. And then after that, our producer had an emergency with her father, so had some health issues with dad. So we had to just kind of curtail things for a while. But we're back up and going. And we have an interesting, very interesting guest for today. He's going to give us some history. Of course, this is a historic weekend because of Martin Luther King's birthday. He's going to give us some history lessons, and then he's going to talk about his book. He is no stranger to most of us in and around Mobile. But I will take a few minutes just to officially introduce him to anyone who does not know Mr. Arthur L. Mack. Arthur Mack is a native of Mobile and a graduate of Davidson High School. He's also a graduate of Bishop State and the University of South Alabama with a BA in history. He has almost 40-year career as a freelance writer and is a retired welfare case manager with the state of Alabama. He has nearly 23-year career with the U.S. Navy and the Naval Reserve. Currently, he is a staff writer with Call News in Citronelle and is a featured columnist with Stepping Out. And most of you have seen or read his articles in Stepping Out. So I will turn the show over to our esteemed guest, Mr. Arthur Mack.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Of a fact, I am Arthur L. Mack, a native Mobilian, a guy who's done quite a few things in his lifetime and seeking to do yet more. Today is a very special day. As our host mentioned, we're dealing with history. And one of the things I pursued as a writer was the history of Martin Luther King Avenue. Back in the 90s, when I was involved with a group called the Northside Area Improvement Association, what we tried to do was see about improving conditions on Martin Luther King Avenue, because at the time, it was not really a safe place. The area had run down. It was a shell of what it was during its glory days, which was, way back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and even early 70s. A lot of us, who can remember when there were a whole lot of businesses on the avenue, we remember those days quite well. And one lady that I'm very acquainted with said that Martin Luther King Avenue, formerly known as Davis Avenue, was basically like Black Wall Street of Mobile. Mm-hmm. You had various businesses, doctor's offices, nightclubs, clothing stores. I grew up right off the avenue, and I remember those days very well. I patronized a lot of those places. My grandmother patronized quite a few of those places, and it was a shame to see that area of town, deteriorate right before our very eyes. And things really took a bad turn once Central High School closed back in the early 70s. So a group of us got together in the 90s and looked at ways to try to bring more attention to the Martin Luther King Avenue area and try to, get it revitalized. We did various things. Back when I was columnist for the New Times, which was a paper owned by the late Senator Michael Figures, a lot of the articles I wrote during that time dealt with events that we were having, to bring attention to the Martin Luther King Avenue area. And in some ways, we were successful in bringing attention to the avenue. In some ways, we were not. And I'm just hoping that at some point, someone, takes the reins once again and, get the avenue back to its, what prominence it had back in the day, so to speak. Things have changed, true enough, but if there is some way, shape, or form we can get more businesses there, more housing there, and bring more positive attention to the avenue, hey, it's going to be one of the places to be in Mobile. And speaking of one of the places to be in Mobile, it's kind of funny, but my writing career actually started back in 76 and 77 when I was writing for the Mobile Beacon. It was my first job right out of college. I was basically an advertising representative and a news reporter. Got my first real whiff of journalism, even though I was a history major. And one of the things that really fascinated me was the fact that, a whole lot of our people did not quite understand, the importance of having a strong Black press. And after I left the Navy, left the Beacon and enlisted in the Navy, I said to myself, if I come back to Mobile, I want to do something positive. And, it's kind of funny how things take a crazy turn, but I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Getting back to history about Mobile, during my writing career, I was blessed to be able to write a whole lot of stuff about things going on in Mobile with the change in the form of government. Back in the day, that Mobile was under a 3-member commission, which rotated at certain intervals. So there was no way in the world you can get any kind of minority representation, not with the way it was set up. It was not until 1985 that the change of government took place where you went into a mayor council form of government. And a lot of people really cheered that decision because it was then that African Americans had a voice in the city of Mobile, at least something resembling a voice. And looking back, when you think about the people who sacrificed so many things in order to get that type of government, to get a representative form of government, my hat is off to them. And we have to really think about that, during Black History Month and beyond, for that matter. I remember during the Civil Rights Movement, you had neighborhood organized workers, striving hard to, ensure that Black people had rights. You had the Nonpartisan Voters League headed by the late John L. LaFleur. You had quite a few other groups and individuals who sacrificed a whole lot in order to, make things better for African Americans in Mobile. And it continues to this very day, believe it or not. There were times, in the past that, there was a lull in leadership. For some people, the last real strength that we had, with leadership was when Senator Michael Figures was living. And after his death, it seems like things just kind of went flat. It was not until a few years ago that you had some young people coming up who began to become more vocal in what was going on in the city. And I really applaud them for that. I thank them for that because it tells me that all hope is not lost, And with the recent news that as a result of the census, you're going to have 4 majority Black districts, that's going to be a game changer. And I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot more said about that as time goes on. But as far as my part in playing a role in trying to make things better, when I was writing for the New Times, which covered the period 1982 to 1996, I tell people, there was some really good times back then because I was looking forward to touching on a whole lot of topics that affected the African American community, not only locally, but nationally, and in a few cases, internationally. Talked about everything under the sun, from voting to community involvement, even relationships, even romantic relationships. And sometimes it's kind of funny now, but when I touched on romantic relationships, people kind of gave me a funny look, saying, "Huh? What do you know about stuff like that?" Hey, I lived it. When you've had a long life like I had, 67 years, you get the opportunity to see quite a few things in your lifetime. And not only that, I learned a lot too. Let's. I want to step back for a moment and talk about how I got involved with writing for the New Times. It was in the summer of 1982. I was still trying to find my way in life after I finished my 4 years active duty in the Navy. I had a job, but it was not satisfying to say the least. One day when I was off, I went to one of the convenience stores not far from where my wife and I lived. And I stepped inside the store. There were these group of kids, African American kids. They could have been no more than maybe 7 or 8 years old. And they were gathered around the magazine rack. Those of you who remember TV Guide, it had on the cover the actor William Catt, who starred in The Greatest American Hero. And a lot of you may remember that show back in the 80s on ABC. These kids were all excited, seeing that, and I thought to myself, hey, wouldn't it be something if they got excited about positive African American role models? So a few weeks after that, we had our class reunion, our 10th class reunion. And I was going around the various media, passing out announcements about some of the activities that we had. And I stopped by the New Times, and I was talking to the receptionist there, and I was telling her about this experience I had at the convenience store. We talked at length about it. She said, well, you know something? You ought to write something about it. I said, you think so? She said, yeah, why not? So I did. They really liked it. So they approached me about writing another column for the following week. And it went on and on and on. And as they say, the rest is history. There's the H word again, guys. History. During those 14 years that I wrote for the New Times, there were so many things happening, not in Mobile, but throughout the country. As I said before, I was blessed with, being able to talk about those things, give my points of view. And I really look forward to that. I mean, there were some highs, there were quite a few lows, but hey, I felt it was something that needed to be done. And after the New Times ceased publication in 1996, I was at a crossroads in my life. There was this friend of mine from South Alabama who suggested to me that I write for the Press Register. He had been after me on and on about that for God knows how long. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I don't want to deal with the Press Register, because at that time, the Press Register did not have a great relationship with the African American community at all. It did not have a great reputation. As a matter of fact, some people in the African American community despise the Press Register. And so after the New Times ceased publication, because at that time, not only was I doing my column, I was doing regular news articles, I was doing features, I was a sports editor there. My friend says, "Hey, now is your chance to really talk to somebody at the sports department at the press register and show them some of your stuff." So I did. They were pretty impressed and started writing there. And that's how my career as a sports writer came into being. And it was basically at first track and field because I was a track and field athlete back in the day. And if you wonder how track and field dovetails with history, when I was out running, I saw a whole lot of things going on, positive and negative. And I incorporated that in my stories. And I did not realize it at the time, but that stint with the Press Register, which lasted from 96 until 2012, when it transitioned to AL.com, would serve me really well. So when I was with the Press Register, I had a lot of opportunities to write for other newspapers, do a whole lot of freelance writing for other newspapers, all over the country, Orlando, Atlanta, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Contributed quite a bit to those papers. Hey, I even did a little bit of freelancing for the Associated Press. Funny how that worked out, huh? But, it's funny how doors can open when, you're just doing something, how inspiration sparks you to doing great things. And believe me, it has helped a lot. I don't know when we're going to go on break to talk about my book, and I'm pretty sure they're going to let me know, hopefully. But I want to talk about how writing for newspapers helped me as far as writing novels is concerned. I've had a total of 4 novels so far. The first one, entitled Dignity Before Dollars, it was inspired by an incident as well. In the early 80s, after I got out of the Navy, I was working at Montgomery Ward's. A lot of you may remember Montgomery Ward's, the department store in Springdale Mall. Well, one day, I got into a verbal altercation with the security manager there. He and I butted heads. It was all because of a gate in the back of the lawn and garden department. Our manager had told me to make sure the gate was open, and our security manager demanded that it be closed. So we went through a whole lot of back and forth. And when we went up to the manager's office, I explained to him what happened. He didn't take my side. He really left me out to dry, and I wound up being suspended 3 days without pay. I was so mad. I said to myself, you know what? Something's got to give here. I got to do something to keep myself from getting in very serious trouble. So I took that incident and came up with the concept for a novel. That novel, Dignity Before Dollars, is based on a young African-American professional who has a pretty decent job, but he's trying to move ahead in life. He's trying to move ahead in the company because he has some ideas that can really make the company grow. But he's hamstrung by his superiors. One day, when he's going to pick his wife up from work, he gets into an altercation with some youths. The ringleader of the group, gets into a heated argument with our hero. Police come. They wind up assaulting our hero. He gets thrown in jail. And the guy who instigated the fight winds up, going scot-free, so to speak. And he's in jail. He runs into this elderly gentleman who tries to give him some advice, how to keep a cool head and all. Turns out this elderly gentleman had been arrested for killing his wife. But in a strange twist, the actual murderer was the young man who our hero had the altercation with. The young man in question happened to be the son of our hero's boss by his first marriage. And time passes, and the hero of the story has an opportunity to be promoted on the condition that he does not testify at the old man's trial. When our hero refuses, that's when all hell breaks loose, so to speak. And during this time, he's being harassed by the ringleader of this group. And, it's just crazy and gets crazier and crazier. And I'm not going to give away how the story goes, but if you want to read Dignity Before Dollars, you can find it on Amazon.com. I have it at various bookstores, Mobile Bookseller, in the Skyland Shopping Center on the corner of Asea Road and Government Boulevard. I also have it at the Haunted Bookstore. And if you go to my Facebook page, Works by Arthur L. Mack, there will be various articles, various things about, Dignity Before Dollars, as well as, the other books I've written. At some point, I plan on writing a sequel to Dignity Before Dollars. I'm not going to let you know just when that's going to happen, but it is not a matter of if, it's going to be when. And when that happens, you guys will be the first to know about it because I want to share that good news with you. So let's just hope that things work out well. Keep your fingers crossed because I have some great things, some great ideas coming down the pike in 2022.
Mr. Matt, can you hear me?
Oh, I hear you great.
Great. I've been making some comments along the way. I didn't know if you heard those or not.
No, I haven't.
Can I back you up a little bit and go back to some of the history, and then we'll kind of work our way up to the books? The North Side, you said there was an organization called North Side something or the other.
The North Side Area Improvement Association. We started that organization back in the mid-90s.
Okay. And what was the function of that?
The function was to bring awareness to the Martin Luther King Avenue area. It was an advocate for improving conditions, in the Avenue area, in the Martin Luther King Avenue area. One of the things that we did was designated structures that played a major role in the Avenue's history. Structures, 40 years older or more.
Yes. Were you guys able to make any success with that? I mean, because I know you lost a lot over there.
Well, we were able to designate quite a few landmarks.
Good.
Right. One of the landmarks was Stone Street Baptist Church. Well, not only Stone Street, but several other churches. We also were able to designate the Caldwell Building on the campus of Bishop State Community College.
Yes.
We were also able to designate several other places as well.
Okay. Do you know if there is a similar group that's working towards any of that now?
Well, I know, the Davis Avenue Trail headed up by the Finleys, they've been doing some things. They've been designating some spots in the Avenue area. And, that's brought some attention to the Martin Luther King Avenue as well.
Good. Great. One of the other things you mentioned, I've got about 4 or 5 questions, so just bear with me, please.
Okay, sure. This is fun.
One of the other things you talked about was the Black Wall Street.
Right.
Would you kind of go into a little bit of an explanation for people, for the audience? What exactly did you mean by it was almost like Black Wall Street?
Okay, I think I had mentioned that before. I'll be more than happy to mention it again.
Yes.
You had a bank there. You had doctor's offices. One of the doctor's offices I remember vividly was Dr. James Franklin.
Yeah.
That was my grandmother's doctor. That was my doctor when I was a little kid. You had several drugstores there, Finley's #1 and #2 and #3, I believe. You had movie theaters there. You had the Ace Theater. You had the Lincoln Theater. You had the Pike Theater.
Yeah.
And the Booker T Theater.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You had floral shops. You had clothing stores.
Yeah.
It was basically a self-sufficient area. And you even had different nightclubs there, where
Yeah.
people could hang out at night, and have a good time. A lot of people may not know this, but the Avenue was the place to be for nightlife.
Yes. Yeah.
There were places where, different entertainers spent time. They entertained there. You had places not far from the Avenue where they were able to, spend some time and relax there, because remember, during the mid 20th century, blacks were not allowed to,
No.
patronize
Mhm.
predominantly white hotels.
Exactly.
And, they had to have somewhere where they could entertain,
Yes.
the clientele, as well as, find a place for rest. So,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I meant when I said it was the Black Wall Street of Mobile.
Okay. Okay. Uh, Speaking of the change of government, would you speak a little bit about that? When it happened for Mobile, how Mobile was governed prior to that, and then what happened after that change occurred?
Okay, well, before the current change of government took place, Mobile was governed by a 3-member commission.
Mhm.
It rotated, I believe, every 16 or 18 months.
Yeah.
And each of the 3 commissioners took turns being the mayor, basically.
Okay.
And really, with a setup like that, there was no way in the world you was going to get any kind of black representation at all. Blacks basically didn't have a voice. They were at the mercy of this 3-member commission.
Yeah.
And more often than not, they were not representing interest in the African American community.
No.
So
No. Mhm.
there was a lawsuit filed. Wiley Bolden was one of the parties in the lawsuit,
Yeah.
demanding that there be a change in government. And in 1985, as a result of the Sogby Act, the form of government was changed from a 3-member commission to a mayor-council form of government.
Mhm.
What that did was it created 3 African-American districts, which meant that there was some representation in the African-American community.
Good. 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 And you mentioned a little bit about the possibility of Mobile, city of Mobile, picking up an additional minority district.
Yes, I want to elaborate on that.
Yes,
The
please.
reason being is because there has been a population change. As a result of the most recent census, Mobile lost a lot of people, and there was a lot of population shifting. The city as a whole became majority black, something like maybe 51 or 52% black.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with migration of people, the western parts of the city, what happened was, as a result of that, it created more, some of the other districts became, more minority.
Yeah.
I know at least one of them districts did. District 7,
Okay.
is a prime example. It has become more of a minority district now,
Okay.
whereas in years past, it was predominantly white.
Mhm.
But, with people being able to be more mobile, having more income, more means of finding somewhere else to live, you had a whole lot of population shifts. And then, too, with the elimination of some of the housing projects in the central part of the city, that caused a population shift as well.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And that's basically the reason why it's going to wind up being 4 majority minority districts.
Oh, okay. Now, I do know that the mayor has been pushing this annexation. Will that impact any of that?
Well, to be honest with you, in my opinion, it's too soon to tell how it's going to really affect it.
Okay.
Because I know for a fact that most of those areas, in the crosshairs for annexation are predominantly white.
Okay.
Whether it's going to change dramatically, what's with the other districts, it's not, I don't know for sure.
Okay.
But I know this: if it does happen, with the next census, they may have to redraw the districts again.
Ah,
That's my opinion.
yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking is going to happen. I
Okay.
could be wrong, but there's a possibility that it could happen.
Uh-huh.
Now, I don't know if it's going to, some people say that it's still going to be a majority black city. But as far as each district goes, depending on how it's redrawn, you know, that's a big question mark, in my opinion.
Yes. Yes. Yes, it is. And that's quite a bit of power that's held in few people's hands with
Yes,
that
uh-huh.
redistricting.
Right. Hmm. It's
And
going to the next few months are going to be very interesting, I'm thinking.
yes, yes, it is. And it will be. And that is something that we as a group of minorities, whether you're black, brown, yellow, or red, that
Right.
is something that we need to all pay close attention to.
Yeah, the key is to become more active. That includes voting. That's
Yes,
the main thing. Getting out and vote, because the last municipal elections turnout was very poor.
it is.
That
It
was
is.
one of the things I addressed, some of my columns for stepping out. I was really disappointed with the turnout, in voting because, when you look at when you think back to all the people who sacrificed so much,
Yes,
you know, so we could vote.
exactly. Mhm.
So there were people who lost their lives
That's
so
right.
we could vote. And
Hmm.
yet, people are just being lackadaisical.
Hmm.
And then add on to that, the push in some states
Yes,
to
yes.
curtail voting rights. That's why it's crucial now that we get more involved in the political process, as far as the ballot box is concerned.
Mhm, mhm. That was actually going to be my next question to you, was to give us some viewpoints, your opinions on those two voting rights bills that have settled in the Senate right now. And
Hmm.
what do you think we as a group of people can do?
Well, midterm elections are coming up in the next few months. We need to send a message that they need to look out for our interest.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Mhm, mhm.
And my concern is if you get too many people, agitating for curtailment of voting rights, we could be in a situation, before the Voting Rights Act of 1965 took place.
Yes, yes.
You're going to have instances, where people of color, black,
Mhm.
brown,
Yes, yes.
Asian,
Mhm.
whatever, are going to be limited, in their options as far as getting out the vote is concerned because of all these crazy rules that they're going to put in place to keep us from voting. And,
Exactly.
it's just frightening. It
Mhm.
really is.
It is. It is. And I don't know if we all realize that it could easily mean that the whole United States could become a one party country as opposed to having at two parties, sometimes three parties or whatever, competing for your votes.
Yeah. And I thought about, the prospect of this country falling under one party. And I'm going to be flat out honest with you.
Mhm.
It scares me to death
Yes. Yes.
because you can potentially have something like what's in Afghanistan, North
Yes.
Korea,
Hmm.
Russia.
Or
I mean,
not.
having one party, just one ruling party, is not healthy for the United States at
No,
all.
no, mm-mm, not. not at all. And we have so many states. I think it's something like 19 states that have passed laws that would actually curtail the voting rights of some people.
Yeah,
Uh
as far as I'm concerned, that's 19 too many.
huh. Exactly. Exactly. And a lot of times the young people, we are talking about the voting rights bill that was
Mhm.
back in 1965. Well, the young folks don't have a clue. They
No,
they
they
weren't
don't.
even being thought of at that time.
Right. I don't. I'm not gonna condemn. I'm not gonna come across as condemning these individuals about not voting, but it's more about education really than
It
anything
is.
else.
It is.
We have to do a better job of educating people
Yes, we
about
do.
the importance of voting. We have to let them know the the past history of not being allowed to vote.
Exactly. Hmm. 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 And the things that happened to people when they attempted way
Yeah,
back when
oh, yes.
to vote, to try to vote.
Right. More often than not, it was met with violence.
Yes, yes.
Some people lost their lives as a result of that.
Uh-huh. They certainly did. Um, let's move to your books. I know that this is not your only one, and
No, it's not.
I told you I love the mystery, so this will be
Mhm.
on my bookshelf pretty soon. But
Okay,
tell us a little bit about some of your other books.
gladly. The second book I wrote, Tales from the Black Side, it's a collection of short stories taken from when I wrote for the New Times back in the 80s and 90s. They
Mhm.
dealt with futuristic situations, but they were basically about things that happened in the African American community, black on black crime, um, relationships, things of that nature.
Yeah.
Not only that, I also in those with those short stories, I touched on what would happen if they stopped teaching Black history, and believe it or not,
Ah,
I thought about that
yes,
not a while back, and there, over the past few months, there's been this movement to
yes,
eliminate critical race theory.
yes, yes.
And when I thought about it, I said, "Oh my goodness!"
Mhm.
I wrote about
Mm,
something like that, in Tales from the Black Side.
exactly. So you saw it way back then, didn't you?
Yes, and
Mm.
I hate to tag myself as a prophet, but some of this stuff that I wrote about back in the 80s and 90s came true. I
Exactly.
talked about one of the other things I talked about was potential for a race riot, and we had, the Rodney King case. That was, really something to really behold because there was so much anger. And
Yes.
when I wrote that short story in the New Times about the Great Race Riot, that was back in the 80s.
Mm.
I
Mm.
based it on the year 1994,
Yes.
and the Los Angeles riots took place in 1992.
Yeah. Isn't that something? Oh,
Yes. Mhm.
amazing. Amazing. You definitely had your finger on the pulse of the world, pulse of at least the USA's world.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Little did I know. I mean, gosh, it's funny how you can write a short story and, dealing with a hypothetical situation and it somehow comes true.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. But I kind of think writers, those of you like you that are gifted like that, I think you guys have a vision that tends to extend a heck of a lot further than the average person. I think you guys can see way down the road and around the curve, you know.
Yeah, some people would say that we're creative,
Mhm.
others will say that we're crazy.
No,
But,
no.
hey,
Uh-uh. Look,
there's a
you
method
have
to
to
our
dream it.
madness, trust me.
You have to dream it first, don't
Yes, you do. Hmm.
Yes, that's true. Well,
Right.
look, we have really enjoyed you. You are an excellent, excellent person to interview.
Thank you.
Very,
Thank you.
very knowledgeable.
Hmm.
We are going to, and I think you and I have already talked about this, maybe the possibility of getting you to come back on kind of on a regular schedule
Oh, that would be lovely.
And keep us abreast of what's going on, what's coming down the tube, the things that you know our community needs to know and hear about.
Okay, great.
And of
I'm
course,
looking forward to that.
great, great. And of course, bring your next book so you can talk to us about the book and we can post a picture of it. And then, of course, we can put on there where they can go to find it and that
Right.
kind of
Hmm.
thing. Okay.
Right. Yeah. The last two books that I wrote, I hope to talk about them the next time I'm on,
Yes.
and whatever else is coming down the pike, I want to talk about that as well.
Exactly. One of the things that we didn't get to it, we're going to save it for next time. But I know you're very active with the that Central High group. Haven't you done some writing with that?
Well, I
Um,
haven't done writing for the Central High Group, but I know some people who have been involved in it.
okay.
Right, and they're, I have my hats off to them. To you know, when you do something to try to maintain the history of a school that played such a vital role in the
Yes.
African American
Yes.
community, that's saying something right there.
It does. It does. It does. Well, and I think they have a pretty large following trying to save the school
Right.
and
Hmm.
save the name of the school.
Right.
I often tell people that if Representative Yvonne Kennedy was still alive, they wouldn't have even entertained the thought of doing away with Central.
Right. Uh-huh.
But
Central is too valuable to waste. I
it
mean,
is
all the work they put into that building to make it a part of Bishop State, and, you know, seeing the prospect of it just going away, it's
exactly.
just unfathomable to me.
It is. It really is. It really is. Well, once again, we have enjoyed you,
Oh,
and
I
we
enjoyed being on here.
well, thank you. And we will get with you about what other you take a look at your calendar for February and March, and then give
Okay.
us some potential dates so that we can go on and kind of ink you in. Okay.
Okay. Sounds great.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you again, Mr.
Thank
Arthur
you. All right.
L. Mack. And please go on Amazon or check the stores locally and look for his book, Dignity
Before dollars.
Before Dollars. I knew dollars was in there. Dignity Before Dollars
Hmm.
by Arthur L. Mack. And we want to thank you again. And
Oh, my pleasure.
we're getting ready to close out our show. We have certainly enjoyed Mr. Mack, and we are, as we said, will invite him back so that he can come back and talk with us and give us some more history and talk about his books. Now, next week, we're still dealing with what's going on in the city and the redistricting and whether or not the minority community will get a chance to pick up one more city council member. So we're going to have Mr. William Carroll, a city council member, William Carroll on. We also will have Mr. James Pendleton, who is affiliated with the Mobile Area Black Chamber of Commerce. Yes, there is a Black Chamber of Commerce. So you guys need to stay tuned so you can hear all about it. They have wonderful functions. They do trainings, they do education classes, and they also have some funding sources, or help you with some funding sources. So if you're one of those businesses, minority owned business, and you're trying to get started, a good place to network with is the Mobile Area Black Chamber of Commerce. And we'll have Mr. Pendleton next week, along with our city council member, Mr. William Carroll. Thank you for joining us, and we will say good evening, and we will see you next week, same time, same station, same place. Good evening.